start with our first session, in which our chief economist, Daniel Knapp, will do a deep dive into the audio market. So, Daniel, over to you.
Thank you, Clem, for the introduction, and a very warm welcome from me as well. To set the scene, I would like to provide a brief survey of this very interesting and fast expanding audio landscape that we're seeing today. And although audio was already growing quite strongly in 2019, we've had a compounding effect with what's happening now with COVID and the macro changes this brings about. Of course, from an ad spend perspective, this is not necessarily good news in the short term, but the pressure and pace of technological innovation in the audio sector, that the new life that we find ourselves in has really even more accelerated, presents a tremendously interesting opportunity for the midterm. So you hear the term technology a lot in my presentation, and there is a narrative there in how a technological change through delivery, content creation, and monetization, which has been fairly absent or stagnant or slow in the old world of audio, is suddenly providing a flywheel effect. And what I will do, once I share my screen, is to really go to two parts. Here we go. The first thing to bear in mind is we can't understand the future of advertising funded audio, the business model of digital audio advertising, without really understanding the broader landscape in which audio consumption, creation, and new business models take place. And what I found remarkable is when Clem introduced audio as an opportunity that is happening now. There's a certain sense of urgency there. But let's, from 2020, travel a little far back in time to see what were the beginnings of ad-funded audio with the emergence of radio. Because this notion of innovation that we're hearing here has happened before. So let's excavate the future. Here's a wonderful feature from Radio News, an industry publication, when radio was just about to be born. And there's a vision of the future, a very daring forecast that I would never I would never do, but it's quite particular in its vision and its enthusiasm. So here's a narrator who thinks he's in a 21st century flyer. Could be an airplane now, between London and New York, and there's an imaginary passenger. There's a small rubber disc, which could be an iPod in a sense, and listens to it. And he'll hear the news live, wireless over the world. At the same time, millions of other people do the same. And suddenly the broadcasting by radio phone, as they call it, has displaced the newspaper. So we can clearly see a quite compelling vision where a lot of these things have rendered true. And the story of audio changing and being in innovation. And the question is, what has happened between 1922 and today? And can we dare a similarly bold forecast in the next couple of years based on the trends that we're seeing right now? And indeed, yes, radio was the disruptive innovation in media, in ad-funded media, in the 1920s and 1930s. We're fortunate to have a long history back of ad spend, going back to Bob Cohen, the godfather of ad forecasting. Spent a lot of time at McCann, and we can really see the chart of radio where it emerged as a mass commercial medium post the gramophone area, really. And you can see the long continued growth, outpacing newspapers and growing kind of in line. And things really only changed with the emergence of television, which suddenly provided broad reach and addressability, not just in an audio, but in an audio-visual way, and really gave rise to the 20th century consumer society that we know about. But what has happened in between? Has audio really continued and delivered long-term this innovative trajectory? And a couple of days before our session here, a very interesting piece of research was published that I all encourage you to read, from Matthew Ball. It's a must read on the future of audio, the most comprehensive and sharp analysis I've ever seen on this space. And I would like to take two slides from his analysis to really illustrate why audio has been held back in a sense, and how, if we look at gaming and video, we can see how the opportunity for audio might unfold in the future. So the thing you've seen here, this is just recorded music, but as an illustration, going back to the 70s, you can see 6 different media. We've got vinyl, 8-track, cassettes, CDs, and so forth. And the quality of delivery, the listening experience has been improved throughout. But revenues have been predominantly cannibalistic, taken from one medium to the other, or they've even been reduced. So songs have been rebought on new media, and new songs have been released on new media, but that's about it. There hasn't been really a fundamental change in the way that the content is delivered over the top, for instance, and adjacent considerations of new ways of monetization, new ways of creation, innovative ways of distribution, scheduling, live, hybrids, mixes with other media, and so forth. And if we look at 2 other industries, the picture is entirely different, where we've seen a lot of technological innovation beyond the storage format, which have led to incremental additional revenues on top of the existing channels. So if we look at video revenues, overall video revenues for the US, we can really see here how, despite new channels coming on, old channels have continued, and these new channels have layered on top new things. Over the top has changed what content is being produced, has changed how content can be monetized, has changed when it can be accessed, and so forth, from live to on-demand binging, and so forth, new advertising models through IP-based delivery systems, etc. And the same we've seen in the gaming world, where we moved from the world of arcades, what's kind of out-of-home gaming, where you went into a dedicated venue, to the rise of the console, the rise of the PC, and now the rise of the mobile. And suddenly we see social gaming platforms, we see massive multiplayer opportunities, we see Discord and other channels, adjacent industries coming up, which have all led, spurred by technological innovation, the massive growth of a new ecosystem of additional revenue. So the question is, how and when is the same happening in audio? And there's some things we can observe currently. First of all, we've always seen that radio time is drive time. And with the rise of connected cars and the installed base of connected cars exploding over time, there are completely new ways, of course, of consuming audio in the car environment. And this would be critical for programmatic audio, but also for other forms of ad monetization through audio, where we can now go over the top and have completely different experiences. We also see an explosion, obviously, of voice capable devices, although we don't directly see a correlation between voice assistants right now and audio ad revenue. It creates new consumption experiences, it creates new habits, it places audio firmly in the media consumption schedule of people, similar to how a connected device, smart TV landscape is changing the world of linear TV. So these are kind of 2 macro trends when it comes to the distribution of audio. But we can also see many other things happening, where we can see, to start, the mirroring of innovation that we've seen in the video space and in the gaming space coming to audio, where we have now streaming platforms, often concentrated, which can drive innovation. We have acquisitions through podcast networks, for instance. We have self-serve tools, really reducing the barriers of access to creating and distributing audio content. We're seeing niches popping up, and we're also seeing how audio content on very, very different platforms, which have never been audio first or audio native, is suddenly giving rise to a much broader audio experience and opportunity. For instance, recently, you might have seen it on TikTok, was a man skateboarding, drinking a wonderful cranberry juice, and listening to Fleetwood Mac. This went viral, and even Fleetwood Mac responded to it. So suddenly, old songs, and something similar happened with Phil Collins, old songs are being rediscovered by new audiences on completely new platforms. We're seeing Discord, a social community predominantly for gaming, including audio features where clans and co-players can listen to songs together even when they're offline or not playing in their team. So again, audio becomes a kind of a connective fabric in the overall social experience. And similar thing we're seeing with Roblox, a gaming platform where you can build your own games, which also now has soundtracks and audio in there for people to collaborate and listen to together. And you can build your own songs into your own games that you create. So this really creates a flywheel effect of access to content, access to production, and then of course an expanding market overall with completely new business models. And we're seeing a massive expansion now, technology driven, of the audio opportunity. We of course know Apple Music, we know Spotify, Deezer and so forth, but many other things are happening right now where investors are really looking towards. You just see a list here of 6 startups that are currently popping up, which are audio first. With Clubhouse, it's live streaming audio where people in closed groups can chat together via audio messages. Big investor here with Andreessen Horowitz, invite only. It spurred some criticism because of user misconduct, so that's something to bear in mind. Another one, Locker Room, focus on live conversation in sports. Geneva, private audio, etc. So in a sense, the WhatsApp for audio for closed groups. Chalk, Spoon, Rodeo, and you can see all the different niches that they're occupying. We can see that the next wave of social platforms are likely to be audio. So for instance, the founder of Rodeo says, it might sound strange, but what I really want to do is create the Snap, create the TikTok for audio. So completely new things, detached from the primarily kind of radio-centric music listening experience to audio as a completely different social platform. And we're seeing the next frontier with all of this, accelerated by the COVID pandemic and the inability of people to gather physically, as we're here on the Zoom. So on the left here, you see global live music revenue, which has been growing over the last couple of years into what's globally at around a $28 billion industry annually. What happens when people can't go to concerts? What happens if technological innovation disrupts and changes this immersive experience? An example you can see on the right, where we got the Travis Scott concert in Fortnite. Again, a gaming platform, so key to innovation, these platforms, with 30 million unique participants. We got 200 million YouTube views. The song, which was premiered here, topped the Billboard charts, etc. And now Fortnite does regular concert events with millions of live audiences. And we're seeing on the back of that now digital first content, digital first concert venues and immersive experiences being launched as startups, as you can see on the right. So, and this can democratize the concert experience with new merchandising, new sponsoring, where the barriers to access are lower, where even smaller artists who can't travel globally, can't travel all the time, can do concerts from dedicated studios globally, broadcast around the world, and also fans can consume more concerts as they don't have to pay that hefty ticket price. So here, similar to esports, a massive opportunity for advertising down the road as well. Back to advertising now from this massive opportunity. We're seeing, of course, radio advertising is a $6 billion industry in Europe. Not all spend for audio is coming from radio. A lot of it is incremental, coming from other media. But if you just look at the radio spend versus mobile broadband penetration per 100 inhabitants, you can clearly see that there's a disruptive potential here through the rise of digital access. What happened to our digital audio market in Europe in 2020? It was affected, like all other media, by COVID. You see it in the black line here: audio growth, digital audio growth on streaming platforms, digital radio, and so forth. It really did fall off a cliff in March, down approximately 19% in Europe, then down 25% in April, in May, slowly edging its way back. But although there's now material uncertainty around what's happening in Q4, which I haven't really reflected in the forecasts yet, you can see that the rebound factor, the potential rebound of audio, is as big as social. Social is, of course, needed for, in particular SMBs, but digital audio is going to rebound very quickly as soon as the market rebounds. We also see, if I compare my August 2019 forecast with the 2020 forecast, you see this dip in audio overall minus 2.1%, but then a massive resurgence in the next couple of years with longer accelerated growth. And this translates, if we look at the market overall, it will take until about 2023 until we are back on track with the forecast. So that's going to be a 2-year lag effect. But once this effect is overcome, the market will actually be, due to the trends I showed, have accelerated and be larger than the initial forecast. So COVID-19 as a short-term bad, mid-term actually a growth driver for audio. Within that, we see a strong growth in podcasts, still very small, around now single-digit percentage of digital audio ads, grown to around about 15% by the end of the forecast period here in 2023. Same effect, acceleration, and we're seeing faster growth than in the rest of the audio categories. What's behind this growth in podcasts? Podcasts are quite different. Podcasts are really now a superstar business. When you see the Spotify podcast deal with Joe Rogan in the US was a $100 million deal. We got exclusive like on Netflix with Michelle Obama. We've seen BBC launching a podcast unit, celebrities who are not audio native celebrities moving into podcasts, doing their own. And we're now seeing key contracts in the radio industry. For instance, Howard Stern's contract with Sirius XM going to expire at the end of the year. So a lot of liquidity and vibrancy in this audio market. And it's exciting that this is a superstar business now, because this creates broad reach and brand appeal in a consolidated and centralized way, as we haven't seen it for many years in the overall digital space. And you can clearly see that brands are reacting to this and seizing this opportunity. If we take a look at the US, which is around 3-4 years ahead of Europe, when you look at how agencies are booking. So this is something from the IAB US, where you can see that the amount of pre-booked annual deals for podcasts have doubled in 1 year, whereas the scatter market has been significantly reduced. And this means, similar to television upfronts in a sense, that advertisers are at the beginning of the year placing their bets on flagship podcasts. So this is something that is likely to grow the market at the really premium end and not in the kind of low CPM long tail market. Measurement is key for adoption, and it has been holding back the market for a bit. So in 2009, look at the quote on the left, big advertiser interest, can we measure it? Not really sure it can scale. We got a lot of attribution providers right now working on measurement. It's still in its infancy, but getting better. But the appeal of particular podcasts and this brand draw that they have is now so huge that despite these limitations, if we look on the right side, there was just, again, a Spotify example, the conference calls are a goldmine. If we look at that, Omnicom signed a 20 million deal, small in overall terms, but big for the podcasting industry, which is so emergent, a 20 million deal for podcasts, despite limitations around measurement, which is a really, really encouraging sign for this market. What's growing digital audio ads? We got quality and trust, which is highly important in an environment where we're often talking about the integrity of the supply chain. We got the production consumption flywheel that I mentioned earlier, low entry barriers to production, high quality production, self-serve tools, an explosion of content. We got a high share of voice that audio has. It's highly, highly immersive, in particular as people want something else than Zoom and want something else than video in these days. We got the opportunity of having data-driven creatives. And also there is the ad innovation there with formats that are driven by readouts by creators, but also some dynamic ad insertion, which is coming, and last year this big star effect. But to really unlock this market, we need to work together as an industry. And there are a couple of factors that we need to bear in mind to really ensure that this market takes off, in particular the programmatic bit. So the ad-funded model hasn't grown at the same speed as the content. We need to catch up. The infrastructure that we often have wasn't built for audio. This is changing currently. In particular, if we're adapting DSPs or building audio native DSPs, we still got limited analytics. This is something that needs to be worked on. Very, very niche audiences are still there, but hard to find. The question is how much can these narrator-read ad formats really scale? But there are now hybrid models emerging where they can be pre-recorded and then played out programmatically. We've got a massive fragmentation of inventory in the national markets, and also we need to see how audio can be integrated in a broader cross-media experience. And lastly, audio has its own metrics. We can't look at CPMs, etc., which is a good opportunity to keep up the value, but we need to educate the market on what are those metrics, how do we measure them, and what they mean. And with this, I give back to Clementina and back into the studio Thank you very much.